Okay, so Karen, tell me, what were some of the trigger moments that you had that led you to starting your journey with us at RNT Fitness?
So, when we had gone into lockdown the first time, I had joined a free local online group that just did like HIIT sessions. They gave you a HIIT workout every day. It was a nice little, to start with, fairly local community, all done online through a Facebook group with a PT. And it was just something I could do at home. I also had my weights, and I had a weights program. It was one upper, one lower. So I used to do upper, lower, lower, upper, lower the following week or whatever. So I was just doing that at home, and that continued through lockdown. But through lockdown, I had a lot of challenges in my personal life. Things changed quite a lot, and I had to do quite a lot of work on myself mentally. And I wanted something to refocus on, but I needed it to be something from home. I was enjoying the weights, but I'd been doing the same weights program for a year, just at home. So I was looking at maybe getting a new weights program or whatever else. But I wanted to find someone who was passionate about weights, because I don't think, and it's, you know, every PT is different, but not every PT is passionate about weightlifting. They might prescribe it for their clients, but they don't necessarily feel that pure love for it themselves. You know, maybe they're more into the HIIT, or maybe they're more into boxing, or maybe they're more into, you know, whatever. But so yeah, that was a factor. So I sort of started to look at different options of, you know, who I could work with, etc. Looked locally and then also online at various options. And we'd worked together before, a long time ago, when you were in the gym. So, and I enjoyed the programming then, and I'd always followed you throughout your RNT journey. So, you know, I'd been following the podcasts and everything else. So I just looked through and just decided to go for it.
Amazing. What was you mentioned there's a few sort of factors going on in your life that force you to think, okay, I need to double down on my mental and physical health. What were some of what was there a specific moment you were like, something needs to change here? I need to get back control of my health.
Yeah, I don't feel that my health was hugely out of control. And I think quite a few people were shocked when I was like, oh yeah, I'm going on this fitness program or whatever else, because to the everyday person, I almost had abs most of the time. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. I was exercising regularly. I seemed in relatively good shape. I wasn't, you know, my BMI was in a normal range. It wasn't out of control. I ate healthily, etc. But I was struggling mentally. And when I'm struggling mentally, the way I medicate myself is through exercise. But I needed it to be more constructive than it was. I needed a goal to work towards. I felt like I was just, you know, I was weightlifting, but there was no goal. There was no accountability for me. There was no ongoing, right, this is where we need to go next, or you need to change this, or have you thought about this, or why are you doing it? And also, I wanted to be healthy. I've got a 3-year-old son. And yeah, he you know, says about mama does her exercises and he joins in and everything else. But I really wanted to be an example for him. I wanted to be able to do my exercise and then spend quality time with him, rather than worrying about, you know, what I should try and do next or whatever else. It's, you know, you outsource, maybe you get a cleaner or a gardener or something else, and it takes some of the stress away. So having someone do my program and tell me what to do was a way of me taking some of the mental stress away from my life.
Some of the mental challenges you face, are you okay to share what was going on?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with, I was having counselling, and I was having a lot of sleep issues. So I was having terrible nightmares that included night terrors. I was running around every single night. I wasn't sleeping properly. I was getting 3 hours, 4 hours if I was lucky, sleep a night. And I was feeling exhausted. And when you're feeling exhausted, it's really hard to feel well mentally and physically. So my counsellor referred me, well, she thought she was referring me to a sleep clinic, but the insurance company wanted me to see a psychiatrist. So I went to see him, and I was diagnosed initially with PTSD. So he gave me some medication for that. And that was actually partway through my journey with you guys that he gave me the medication. So that was something to get my head around. I was already having weekly counselling, which was helping loads, but I just needed to find a way of getting some kind of sleep that was more than sort of 3 or 4 hours.
With regards to the sleep, like when you just to add some context to it, do you mean you'd fall asleep and then you'd wake up and you'd be up all night, or what was your experience with your sleep, and have you come down to what's caused it?
Yeah, so I left a abusive relationship, and there was something that happened in that abusive relationship that caused the trauma. And I would fall asleep. Everyone assumes that if you don't get sleep, you don't fall asleep at night. I would have no problem falling asleep at all. But almost an hour and a half later, I would find myself running around the room screaming. So I would be asleep, but I would be physically moving, and I would wake up. I would injure myself, or I would find myself, in the bathroom or in my wardrobe or trying to climb into the airing cupboard. And I'd wake up and I'd be so terrified. My heart would be racing. While I was asleep, I was literally having hallucinations. So it felt like there was someone in the room or something in the room. And it would take me so long to come down from that. Imagine being chased by a bear and then being told to go back to sleep. You just physically and mentally are unable to do that. So it would take an awfully long time to get back into any kind of state of ability to sleep. And then you go to sleep and you start having nightmares where mine were, I joke about it, but I was killed a million different ways throughout my nightmares. So I would be killed in the nightmare by a car crash, or like a comedy weight dropping on my head, or whatever it was. And then I'd wake up, I'd take a big breath, sit up in bed and wake up, and I'd have to go through that whole process of calming my heart rate down and everything else. So every time I got to sleep, it was very soon I was back awake again. So it was very inconsistent, and it was tiring. And you end up dreading going to bed because you're going to wake up tired the next morning. When you have a baby, you don't get a lot of sleep, but at least you know that there's probably an end point to it, and it's not their fault that they're waking you up, but it feels like you're causing your own stress by not getting any sleep. It's your own brain that's doing it to you, and it's very difficult to get out of that pattern. It becomes a habit almost that you can't stop your brain from having these nightmares.
What's been the process of improving it, managing it? Has there been improvement? Have you been able to work through this? Where are you at now? Yeah.
So I've been, I was prescribed some medicine, which didn't help immediately at all. And I've been having the counselling, and, it's the same old, I tried doing this thing where you try and interrupt your nightmare with something weird. So whether it's you're floating up to the ceiling with some pink fairy wings eating a jam sandwich, or you have to think of something really random to interrupt you. But it doesn't work for me because I don't recognise I'm dreaming. It feels like I'm awake in my dreams. But the medication started to help, and as that started to help, I dreaded less going to bed. So again, my sleep's not consistent, but like last week was the first week I got a 9-hour stint of sleep, which is the first time in, I can't remember how long that I've had that long of sleep, which felt amazing. In fact, I felt a bit hungover the next day because I don't think I've had that. That's twice my normal sort of sleep length. But yeah, I'm getting more around the 6 hours consistently, which for me is, it more being around consistency than worrying about the length, because I think I could stress myself out thinking I'm not getting 7 or 8, but 6 compared to 3 or 4 is amazing, and I feel so much better for it. And the more I am sure that I'm not going to have a terrible nightmare back to back to back, and I still have them, but it's not consistent throughout the night. I have normal dreams about normal boring things, about my tax return or about, forgetting to get the washing in or whatever else. So that helps as well. So it's kind of, it backs itself out. The more confident you become that you're going to sleep through, the more you sleep through.
And has it been the medication, or has it been the work you're doing with your counselor and your psychiatrist that's helping unpick sort of what's triggered it?
I think. It's chicken and egg. I don't know which came first, the medication or the counselling and everything else kicking in, but a mixture of both. I've done all the switch your phone off beforehand and dim the lights and listen to this, but my problem isn't falling asleep. So those things all work if you can't fall asleep, or help if you can't fall asleep. But I've always luckily been able to fall asleep okay. It's the staying asleep that's the problem.
What are some of the things that you've been working through to improve the symptoms of PTSD?
So again, I suppose it's the same as anyone who's got anxiety or stress or anything like that. So it's, self-care, which I made myself a huge long list of what self-care means to me, and it's been stuck in the kitchen.
I think you posted up one day.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So I listened to a podcast by Ben Coomber, and he did a thing about how he makes his life awesome, and he was like challenge people to do it, and I thought that's a really good idea. So I wrote, a list of how I'm going to make my life awesome, and then separately I'd already got a self-care list written, but I just sort of amended it. But I have it stuck up in my kitchen, so if I'm ever when you're making a cup of tea or whatever, or I'm cooking, I just look at that self-care list and think, how many of those have I done today? And it's really simple things like drinking enough water, watering the plants so that they don't die because then they look nice, reading a book in silence, or going for a walk outside because it really helps, getting some fresh air. So none of it is like going to a spa day for a couple of £100 or, going to have an expensive massage or anything like that. They're all tiny little things that I can do relatively quickly within sort of 5-10 minutes in my day. Read 5 pages is fine, and then I felt that I've read something that day. Or sometimes when I go to the supermarket, buy myself some flowers because they look nice in the house, and they're all inexpensive things that most people can do but that make me happy. So if I'm feeling a bit rough one day mentally, I just look down the list and pick a couple of things. Don't overeat, don't undereat, because both of those things don't help you mentally. So you just need to write a list of what works for you.
It's a really good idea, just keeping it really visible. And then I love the simplicity of it as well. It's that you're not asking people to go on a 4-hour hike, or like you said, book yourself at a spa. It's literally just go water the plants outside.
Yeah, I walk around the block sometimes because I'm working all day and my son's at childcare, but then I can't leave him. So we'll go out in the garden, but it's not the same as going for a walk. So if I don't have much time in my day because of work and I can't do a call on the phone, I always try and do my calls on the phone where I can so I can move. I just literally walk around the block, and it takes me less than 10 minutes and is about 800 steps, but it's 800 steps that I've done outside that I wouldn't have done outside if I hadn't have taken that time, kind of thing.
How's the journey been with your son, and the fact that he's only 3 years old, right?
Yeah.
So you've also got that element of your life. How have you managed the two?
I get up incredibly early is how I do it. So I get up somewhere between 4:45 and 5, and I do my exercise and sometimes some of my steps for the day. I've got a walking machine that I bought during lockdown. It doesn't go fast enough to be a running machine, so it's a walking machine. So I do that before he even gets up, and then the rest of the time when he's up, I'm with him, take him into childcare, etc. And then we always try and do something where we're moving anyway at weekends, or in the evening we'll go and play in the garden, or we'll water the plants together, or we'll play a game and run around, or we'll walk round to the corner shop and buy something so we can bake something. So we try and move as much as we can and get outside at the weekends. And he's just started doing rugby tots, so I have to run around with him in the school hall and throw balls and pretend to be crocodiles and stuff like that. So it's trying to find stuff that, not thinking of it as exercise, but just thinking about moving. I'm not really a sit still kind of person anyway. Anyone who knows me, I don't sit still. I'm not really designed for an office job. I'm constantly moving and twitching anyway. So for me, he loves it if we go wherever, So at the weekends, I don't get up at 5. I do my weights when he's awake, but he likes playing with his toys because he hasn't played with them so much all week. But we have a bit of an argument over who's using the conservatory, because all his toys are in there and all my weights are in there. So it can be a bit difficult to do weights when you've got a 3-year-old around.
Yeah. And with all the stuff that you've experienced in the last year, especially 2 years, how's that? Has your son been exposed to it? How's that?
I would
controlled?
Like to think I've protected him from most of it. I've always tried to, no matter how terrible I felt, always tried to sort of put that to one side for him. I've always tried to make life as fun as possible, etc. So if it wasn't for lockdown, I wouldn't have seen him walk for the first time. He walked on the week of his 2nd birthday, and normally I would have been at work, but instead I was trying to juggle a sales campaign and him at the same time, and he walked. So that was amazing. So lockdowns had benefits, and now I'm not traveling to London 5 days a week. I can do some of the drop-offs and the pickups, etc. So that's been really good as well. But generally, I think he's the same happy little boy that he was beforehand. He just talks a lot more now. So
brilliant. So shifting gears into your fitness journey, how did you find starting the process off back in May, and what was did you have any challenges getting going, or did you sort of just throw yourself all in and commit to the process? Describe that sort of initial sort of couple of weeks in getting going.
Yeah, well, because I'd had this same weights program for a year, it was so exciting to do some different exercises. I can't tell you the excitement. Doing 4 different sets, because I've got my plan over 4 days, doing 4 different, programs over that first week, I was
kid in a candy store.
Yeah, I was absolutely delighted. I thought it was amazing. So it was really exciting to get back into it. I think you have that excitement, and then you have not a dip. It wasn't that I was like, oh, but you have a bit like, this is reality again now, and the hard work starts. I always consume a lot of podcasts, mainly podcasts for me. I tend to listen more than read, but and I listen to quite a few things about pushing to failure, and it's really hard when you're working out at home to push to failure, because there's no one there. Like in a gym, even if you're on your own, you've probably got CCTV or an emergency button or something, and I was always thinking, like, it's much harder. So you kind of have to learn how to fail with the weights. I also picked up some adjustable dumbbells after being recommended on the group, because I had some very light adjustable dumbbells, but I got to the stage where I couldn't really do anything with them. So invested some money in that, and a new bench and a new step. So I already had the free weights. So yeah, it made life a lot easier.
Talk about that failure mindset, because being able to train to failure is a very learned skill, and it sounds very simple on paper. Like, yeah, just train till you can't lift anymore. But when we review training videos, there's always about 2 to 5 reps in the tank. How have you cultivated that ability to train hard over time, and what goes through your mind during a set in order to take yourself to that place? We call it the void. Going there into that place where you're a genuine, true failure. Describe that experience of how you got there and how you get yourself into that state.
I think lifting heavy weights is for me like therapy, because it's one of the times I can't think. When I'm at the bottom of a squat, or I've got my arms in the air with the heaviest dumbbells that I've done or whatever, I can't think about anything else than making sure my muscles work to safely lower or lift or whatever the case may be. And sometimes when your arms or your legs are wobbling, that's when I'm a very placid person. I'm really laid back, but that's sometimes when my anger comes out, and I roar or I shout or whatever the case may be, just to sort of get it done. It's kind of, I'm very competitive with myself. I'm not necessarily as competitive with other people, but I'm very competitive with myself. I always want to beat myself. If I go for a run and I time it, I want to be faster the next time. I want to lift more weights. So, and it's having the confidence to know that if you can't get there, there's a safe way of dropping it. I think about week 4, I actually managed to drop a dumbbell on my face, and I had to
Really?
I was doing some kind of thing, and my right arm just failed, and I dropped it on my face, and I had a lovely bruise that I had to cover with makeup for all my client meetings, because and I spent a lot of time talking to people like this on calls, so they couldn't see. But I soon learned after that, if you're going to drop it to one side. And my dumbbells also say do not drop on them. So and I did drop them once, and you'll probably know the ones, the sort of weight bits slot out, and it took me so much time to work out with some YouTube videos how to put it back together. I swore I'd never drop it again. I'd somehow find a way to fail onto a cushion or something like that. So but yeah, it takes practice, and it's normally it's great to have even a couple of sessions with a PT so that they can actually help you fail, if that makes sense.
I think sometimes just getting someone who has experience in the gym, going with them to the gym, and like you said, getting them to fail with you can be such a good learned experience that it's hard to replicate it in any other way. And I think whether it's a personal trainer or whether it's someone who's got experience who knows how to get there themselves, just going on a leg press or some sort of machine squat where you don't have to worry about your technique and just going to failure, there's just nothing like that learned experience, because then it just changes your whole perspective of training.
Yeah, if you don't get off a leg press and you can walk or still stand up and your legs don't go to jelly, then you haven't trained hard enough.
Love it.
Because you literally can't walk, can you? When you've trained to failure on something like that, you stand up and your legs don't work anymore, and you either sink to the floor or you're holding on to something and sitting down.
Yeah. What sort of things do you say to yourself in your mind when you're getting competitive with yourself? Because I can definitely relate. Like last year, for example, I started doing some running during lockdown. Everyone in lockdown did some new exercise. Mine was running for a bit until I hurt my shin splints. Initially, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go for a casual jog, 25, 30 minutes. Then one day I decided to time myself and track the distance. The day after that, every single one was like, it became like a war against the Strava. And it can be good and it can be annoying and bad, because sometimes you just want to enjoy the exercise, right? But you get this innate competitiveness. What sort of things do you have in your own mind when you're battling the logbook, or you're looking at your old training sessions thinking, I need to beat this? How do you amp yourself up for progression? Because we know progressive overload is the spice that makes progress happen and gains to be made, right?
Yeah, well, first thing I tell myself is, do you want to write down the same number?
Oh, that's a good one.
If it's like a line, do you want the line to be flat, or do you want, like, it doesn't have to be loads. It could be 2.5 kilos. It could be 1 extra rep. It could be anything. If it was a graph, which way do you want the graph to go? Do you want it to be flat? Because if you do, then you can just do the same thing. Or do you want to progress? How quickly do you want to progress?
That's a really good one.
How great do you feel if you beat that number today? Today's going to be good, but it will today be great if you beat that number somehow. Are you feeling strong? You're feeling strong, so you should be able to do extra reps or extra weight or whatever it is, or go extra deep. Like, it doesn't always have to be the exact numbers. It might be that you go deeper on the squat. I've got dodgy knees, so I find it really hard to go deep on a squat. But if I can go a bit deeper without knee pain, or my knees going funny as I stand back up again, I'll take that sometimes as a win rather than just being the weights and everything else. But also you've got to realize that eventually get to a point where you do have a plateau and you're not always going to add weight or reps. So it's good to find other things to focus on when you hit those small things.
It's a good little mantra though. Do you want to write down the same number? I think I might steal that one to myself.
Yeah. Do you want to write down 70 kilos, or do you want to write down 72.5, or do you want to write down 12 reps, or do you want to write down 13 today? If you write down 13, how will you feel? If you write down 10, how will you feel? So, because it's always the last 2 or 3 reps, isn't it? So you get to 10, and you know, if you beat your reps, it's going to be 13. If you match your reps, it'll be 12. So you get to 10, and then you start telling yourself, you know,
which way do you want to go?
3 is going to make it a great day. 2 will be acceptable. 1, you need to get a move on and do something about this.
Now, when you progressed through your journey and you got into some ridiculous condition, probably some of the most impressive condition I've seen in a long time. So I want you to talk about the mindset of getting into that place, because again, it's one of those things that you can only describe it once you've experienced it. And without being biased towards gender, and you don't see many women get into that condition, especially. So do you want to describe that experience of just getting, I mean, if anyone listening, check out Karen's case study linked in the show notes. We'll show you her condition there. You can see it, especially her back. Like that's some back, right? Talk us through that experience.
I had no idea that I looked like until Shane showed me that photo of my back. He was like, look at your back. And I was like, I had no idea. I'm on my own. I was like taking photos with tripods in the bathroom for you guys so you could see my update photos. And I don't think I really appreciated it, that I was in any kind of shape ready for a photo shoot, until I put the first photo up on the group with the veins in my stomach. And I just thought everyone's was like that. I just assumed that's what the rest of the group were doing. And, you know, someone else was going to pipe up and go, yeah, mine's like that too.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's like bodybuilding standard lean. Like that's impressive. Yeah. But I didn't recommend.
When you're on your own, you're not in a gym and you don't have a partner. It's like a 3-year-old's not going to go, cool, you know. You don't get any kind of feedback. And, you know, my mum is not a fan of 6-packs, let alone, you know, really lean condition. So apart from everyone telling me my veins on my arms were standing out, no one really said anything. So I you know, in my head I was doing a battle, but I kept, you know, I'd think, oh, I'd do really well, and then I'd sort of hit a plateau, and then it was always the calls that sort of set me off again on a more positive. Those group calls are, you know, beyond their worth, really. I always came out of those group calls really positive, like, you know, you can do this. Because I didn't believe I could do it. Even though I was doing it, I still didn't believe I could do it. I got these limits in my head about weight, or, you know, whatever, how much weight I could lift. I got limits on how much weight I could go below because I'd never been there before, or what condition I could get in. So I'd already set limits, but everyone just kept saying, well, just follow it. And, you know, every time I didn't quite follow it, I had to have a quite serious conversation with myself and go, the reason you're not getting the results is because you're not following what you're being told to do. So do what you're told, and it works, and you know it works. So stop, you know, stop sabotaging yourself because you've got a limit in your head, and just get on with it. And as I got closer, it actually got easier, which I felt like I said to you know, the team, I don't feel like I'm suffering enough, because I'd read all these previous RNTers who'd, you know, talked about the grind and how much they were suffering. And actually I really enjoyed the, you know, the last 4 weeks of it. Okay, my calories were low and my steps were high, but I felt great. I didn't feel like I was getting a buzz from it, rather than feeling like it was a drag, like the steps were taking a long time. So, you know,
do you think you were playing a game with it inside your head? Like were you almost like just competing with yourself and making a game out of it and thinking, how hard can I go?
Yeah, possibly. And because I had that, you know, I'm quite target driven, because I had that weight although I know you can't give me exact weight, I'd taken that as exact weight, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've got a date and I've got to meet it, and if I don't, then I've failed in some kind of way. So I was so focused on 56 kilos that, you know, that's what kept me going, that I knew I had to reach it by that date.
There's a few big lessons there. Firstly is like the power of a deadline. Second thing is raising the stakes with a number. Like when we said to you, look, Karen, I think your goal target is here. You made it really visible on your fridge. You posted it in the group. You kept everyone updated. You booked in a photo shoot. You just raised the stakes and made so much accountability around it within yourself, within us. And it was almost like there was no way you could fail, because everything was all you need to do every day was just turn up and do what you needed to do, because the roadmap was there and the target more than anything was there. But you just create so much pressure around you.
Yeah, I didn't tell you. In my calendar, I had it twice a week, the target weights I had to hit.
Yeah,
and an alarm used to go off in the morning. And it says, have you met this weight? And then it would say the weight that I had to hit.
It's like there's no like secrets to this, isn't it? It's just you just got to follow the process and just go all in. And I think that's what one thing we always speak about within the team. Like when we were looking at where clients' journeys are at, one thing we always used to say when we saw your pictures was like, you've probably got more excuses in the book than anyone else, but you turn up every single week and just knock it through the park.
Yeah, well, I didn't think about it until afterwards, but I'm a single mum. I can only work out at home. I can't go to a gym. I did most of my steps on a walking machine in the lounge. I work a busy full-time job in the city. If I can do this, anyone can do it, really. But then equally, I've got an accountability partner, shout out Shafali. You know, she sometimes said, oh, we have it so much harder than me because you're on your own. But then equally, I don't have a partner who's like, oh, I really fancy a takeaway tonight. You know, when you've got a 3-year-old, he's not going to go, oh, I'm just going to ring Deliveroo or order from Deliveroo a pizza or whatever. He has to eat what I give him. So I could remove some of the factors within the house that maybe other people have challenges with if they're not got a family that's on board, or, you know, they've got a large family at home, etc. So some of that would have been easier, but we've, you know, what is it? They say that we've all got the same 24 hours. What would Beyonce do? So
I've not heard that one. What would Beyonce do?
Well, yeah, because apparently we've all got the same 24 hours in life, and Beyonce's become this megastar with the same 24 hours as the rest of us. So what can you achieve with your time in that 24 hours?
Well, speaking specifically to single mums who may be listening to this, what sort of advice would you give to single mums who are the sole providers and carers for their kids, on balancing their days, creating some level of me time, some level of structure, or whatever tips that can help them be healthier, fitter versions of themselves, so they can be their best for their kids?
Well, food prep is a massive one because it saves so much time, and I used to eat similar things every day and it didn't matter to me. I'd do different stuff for my son, but I'd food prep his stuff as well. So I'd do like 6 portions for him for whatever I was making for him. And it was usually a variation on what I was eating, but not always. So food prep in advance and just chuck stuff in the freezer in individual portions is going to make life so much easier. And also with kids, it's about the intensity that you're with them and the focus that you have on them, not the time that you spend. I always felt guilty about like having a busy job 5 days a week. You know, I'm sure a lot of people would like to not work full time, but I don't have the option. I've got bills to pay, etc. But I went to a conference in the city, and this CEO, she was saying, you know, when I speak to my kids now who are grown up, they don't remember the times I wasn't there. They remember how much fun we had when I was there. So it's about putting your phone down, finding really fun things to do and focusing that. But equally, you know, he knows on a Saturday morning that I lift weights. So he plays for an hour while I lift my weights first thing, and then we'll go and do something fun. He knows that on Sunday morning it's his turn because it's rugby tots. So I'm trying to teach him that each person has their time to do their fun thing that they like to do, and then we do fun stuff together. But definitely getting up before him helps loads because I get so much more done, whether sometimes I have to start work before he gets up or whatever and get stuff done. and sometimes I don't, or, you know, I prefer training in the morning, but it might be that you prefer training in the evening. But, you know, find slots. And it is always that I train a minimum of 5 to 6, and then sometimes I'll add some steps on the end or whatever. But it's focusing on what you're doing so you can get through as much as possible and then get on with the normal stuff. And then if you can afford to, and I know a lot of people can't, I'm very lucky, but I can afford to outsource some stuff. So I have sacrificed some stuff so I can have a cleaner. So that's 3 hours a week that I now don't have to clean, and we can spend time together. You know, on occasions I used a food prep company for a couple of meals, not loads, but I had them in the freezer in case I couldn't, you know, order food in or get a shop on time or whatever. With a busy job, sometimes I don't get to the supermarket. It's hard to take a toddler around a supermarket. So I had just a couple of those in. So if I was ever stuck, I could pull, you know, something that had all the nutritional values. There's loads of food prep companies out there now, but I used one called the Transformation Chef, who, you know, their food was really good, really enjoyed it. And I just had some of those in the freezer. So there was always a backup, because then you're not reaching for something that's going to be completely off plan. I always had eggs and egg whites and a load of veg in the bottom of the thing, so I could always do some kind of omelette if I needed to. So I tried to plan. It didn't always work that I could plan every single meal, but I, you know, did as much as I could with the time that I had. But yeah, if you're thinking that you're a single mum and you can't do something like this, you absolutely can. And, you know, you deserve the time to be as healthy as possible, and your kids will be better for it.
Amazing. I think that's amazing advice. Thanks for sharing that. I think there'll be a lot of value, even just for parents overall. I don't think there's a lot of things there that parents overall can take away from it. So thanks for sharing. Now that you've hit your checkpoint, you've got into this incredible shape, you've consolidated very well. What's firstly, how's consolidation been? But secondly, what's next on the horizon for Karen? Like, what have you decided where you're going to go on the investment continuum? What's your goals with your investment phase? And yeah, what are the plans?
So I'm a perfectionist. So even though my photos are really good, I know I said to you straight afterwards, they could have been better. Like, I've always struggled to live in the grey. I'm very black and white. It's either 100% or it's 0. There's no being happy with 95. So I feel like there's still some work to be done to improve. Certainly my lower half, my upper half, I'm fairly happy with, but my lower half's never really matched, although it came in a lot better than I thought it would. So yeah, consolidation's been up and down. Again, I'm still working through certain mental challenges. I just got diagnosed a couple of weeks ago with ADHD, so I've been processing that. But yeah, the plan is, and I only decided today when I filled out the form for the October cohort, that I'd like to build some more muscle, and then probably go to another, you know, build the muscle and then go back down again one more time. But how long that will take and how we do that, I'm leaving that in your hands.
Yeah. Well, I know you've been deliberating on what you wanted to do for the future. That's good to hear, especially with your performance mindset. I think it's just going to be asking yourself that same question every single time. But with extra food, it's that battle becomes a lot easier, just because there's more fuel in the tank. You mentioned that you've been diagnosed with ADHD recently. How's that impacted your mental health, your physical health, just your overall well-being? And what changes does that mean for you?
I've started on some medication, so I'm only in the first couple of weeks, so it's taking some adjusting, etc., which is hopefully going to improve my concentration on one single task. I tend to be all over the place. I can concentrate on lots of things. So often when I'm writing, I'll listen to something, I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I'll listen to something completely different because it helps me concentrate. So yeah, but it certainly explains the inability to sit still. I'm not someone who sits in front of the TV. I walk on the walking machine in front of the TV if I watch TV. I don't generally sit still. And it explains why I've been using exercise as, ADHD is a lack of dopamine in the brain, and exercise produces dopamine. So I've, without realizing it, been self-medicating by using exercise to improve how I feel. Exercise always makes me feel better. Most people, it makes them feel better about themselves. But, I've been using that for a few years. I did the Muay Thai and the weightlifting and I've done several things throughout the years, running, etc. And also explains maybe why I am, I can quite easily reach for some sugar if I'm, finding it hard to concentrate. I'm sure a lot of people
gives the
do that.
same.
Yeah, because it gives you that dopamine hit. So it's a learning process as well. It's learning why I've been doing things for years and years and years, and why I'm like I am, really, I suppose.
Well, I think as someone who values exercise, it's probably one of the better things you could have done for yourself, even if you did it without realizing.
Yeah, I think there's a higher rate of addiction issues with people with ADHD. So I'm thankful if I've got any addiction, it might be to weightlifting or exercise rather than a substance.
Yeah. I think, and it sounds like you've got a good, even if you might have said it's like self-medicating, you've got a good, healthy relationship with it at the moment. So that's very positive.
Yeah, I mean, I've coped for 43 years with it, but not knowing I had it. So I've got probably a lot of coping mechanisms that help me appear organised, or whatever the case may be, when actually it's completely chaotic in my brain.
So how's the physical been the vehicle for you?
Yeah, the physical, actually paled into, I came to you guys because I wanted I was doing the mental stuff and I wanted to concentrate on the physical, and actually it's turned out not to be the physical at all. I was already moving my body, I was already lifting weights, I was already doing cardio, I was already doing my steps. Okay, you gave me a weights program that targeted certain parts of my body in a different way, and I pushed it, but really that's a small part for me. Having that target, having that focus, knowing that it's making me healthier, and, thinking about things in a different way. Because when you're reaching for the sugar, everyone does it, whether it's the chocolate or you want to binge because, your calories are low and everyone else is eating pizza and you're sat there with your piece of steamed fish and your broccoli. To stop yourself. I think I mentioned this when we were on the group. You have to, I thought about it a lot. You have to think, why am I doing that? What am I doing? Am I self-sabotaging, or am I trying to run away from my feelings? And it's quite hard to sit there with your feelings. It's, really difficult. We distract ourselves all the time from our actual feelings with technology, or, being busy, or with food, or with alcohol, or whatever it is. So you can't reach for the pizza. You actually have to deal with what's in your head instead. And, it might mean that you have to find a different way to deal with it, which is quite tough. But yeah, it's definitely meant that I've started to break some habits of a lifetime, and that I'm much more aware of my own thoughts and feelings, and trying to think about whether things are fact or whether they're feelings, because often we feel things, but they're not really true. So we need to think about whether, I'm feeling fat. No, well, the fact is you're not fat. You might feel fat. Why do you feel fat? What are you feeling bad about, really? What is the true reason you feel like that? Have you had a bad day? What can you do to make yourself feel better? So really, all the transformations that you post are amazing physically, but what you can't show, which you should do, is all the transformations mentally, because that's the biggest win for everyone, I think. At the end of the day, no one's going to remember me for my nice back picture. They're going to remember me for me, who I am, and how positive I live the rest of my life, and how much love I give out to everyone, and, you know, what I do to improve other people's lives and my own, which is the main thing in life, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. Incredible. It's one of those paradoxes always, right? Because people love the physical changes and they come to us thinking that's what they really want. And then they come in and they get something completely different. And 6, 7, 8 months, 12 months later, they were like, oh yeah, I came here for a body, but I've got this whole other new life now and this new lifestyle. But if you try and tell them that at the beginning, they won't listen.
No, and I think when I got down to the lowest weight, everyone was like, oh my goodness, you know, everyone has that thing of once I get to X weight, I'll be happy. And I was like, do you know what? I'm no happier now than when I was at the start weight. It's not, you know, I've worked out it's not about the weight. It's all about the mental work that you do. I could have just been as happy at the higher weight, but it, you know, the process encourages you to become much stronger mentally. Although I am keeping the back shot for my grandchildren.
Of course. You said something about sitting with your feelings, and that was something new for you to explore. Describe that process and what sort of things came out from that.
Yeah, I think I had to process a lot over the sort of past year and a half, and you know, things have been really tough. When I'm feeling lonely or sad or stressed or anxious, it's so easy to eat your feelings. That's the term, isn't it? Eat your feelings, or do something to not think about it. But then you only put it off, don't you? It's like you only put it off to the next day or the next week or the next month, rather than actually dealing with it. And it's almost like, you know, doing the worst admin task you can think of, or whatever else, or the worst bit of your work that you really don't enjoy. If you get it done, you feel so much lighter afterwards, and it's less likely to happen in the future. If you just ignore it, it's like not going to the doctor or the dentist. Your toothache might go away, but it's going to come back, and it's going to come back stronger next time. If you just go to the dentist and actually work out what the issue is, think about it properly, and if you need to get some help or ring a friend or whatever the case may be, then it's done, it's dusted, and it might come back, but it won't come back half as badly next time. Or you'll know how to deal with it, or you'll know how not to deal with it, because sometimes it's about excluding stuff that doesn't work. So, right, you know, I'm feeling really uncomfortable, I'm gonna go for a run. Okay, well, that just made me think about it more. It didn't work. So next time I'm gonna ring a friend and talk it through, or next time I'm gonna book a counselling session, or, you know, actually it's better if, you know, I write this down and chuck it in a fire and it's gone, or whatever, you know, whatever works for people. But it's not all about getting it right all the time.
Because I remember you posted it in the group around this whole concept, right? I think around sugar and around cravings, right? And just being able to sit with it. And I think it's one of the hardest things for anyone to grasp, is the ability to just sort of get the distractions out and just sit with what's going on in your head. Because it's like I remember hearing an analogy. It was like it's a monkey swinging on like trees inside your head, right? That's what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's a crazy playground going on inside there, but we're almost too scared to look at what's going on.
Yeah, it's really hard to look internally and actually be honest with yourself. And it's about honesty, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's why people fail at lots of things, because they're not honest with themselves. Like, it doesn't really matter if I say to you that I've stuck to my calories today if I haven't, because I'm not hurting anyone but myself. So, you know, if I'm eating off plan or whatever consistently, and then coming onto the call and saying, oh, you know, it's not working, I'm not dropping the weight. Well, I know why I'm not dropping the weight, because I'm not sticking to what I've been told. But actually admitting that to yourself is much harder. Like, you think you have, but you haven't. I think I read a report the other week that even fitness professionals underestimate by 250 calories a day, even when tracking, and the everyday public 450. So if a fitness professional is doing 250 and, you know, every day is doing 450, there's a lot of calories to add on when you're on quite, you know, tight timelines kind of thing. So it's really about, I think the process taught me a lot of honesty with myself. You know, just I had to give myself several stern talking tos in the mirror, like, yeah, the reason you haven't dropped is because you've crept slightly on this, or you've not weighed this properly, or, you know, you've got to be completely on point and be honest. And then if it's not working, then you've got to look at why not. But it works as soon as you follow it. You know it works.
That segues nicely into the final bit here is if speaking to someone who's starting their journey now, what's the best piece of advice you give them for the next 12 months ahead that lies ahead for them?
Just action, really. You have to take the actions and you have to be honest, because you get the results when you're honest with yourself and other people. Like, you just have to put one foot in front of the other, even if it's not perfection. But don't beat yourself up if you muck up, but you don't need to muck up for the next month because you mucked up for one meal. You know, you just need to take some decent action. I follow a few people, but someone keeps saying imperfect action, and I think that's the best piece of advice ever. No one's expecting this perfect journey where, you know, you stick to your macros every single day and you never have a life event and everything else, because that's not reality. But you've got to be honest with yourself first, and then you can be honest with the group, and then you'll get the results. And when you start getting the results, then you can be more honest with yourself.
Fantastic. So Karen, thought I'd try something new today. Describe RNT in 2 words, or your journey in 2 words. Describe your journey in 2 words so far.
Journey in 2 words. Oh, put me on the spot. What do I describe it in 2 words? RNT or just my journey?
The RNT journey. Your RNT. You can do both if you like.
You do both. Okay. So RNT, I would definitely say friendly. I like the support from the other members, not just my accountability partner, but the other members in the group couldn't have been nicer or more supportive. It's like when you're on your own and you haven't got your family shouting for you because they don't really understand what you're doing. Having that group online is, you know, having friendly people is really inspiring as well. Friendly and inspiring, I'd say, is the 2 words for RNT.
Just on that, how have you found the community aspect of, because normally we have the self accountability, like you speaking, being honest with yourself. You have the accountability to the team of coaches, but you also create a peer level accountability. How have you found ramping that up? Because I know you've really embraced that and you've really thrown yourself into all 3 levels of accountability.
Yeah, I think everyone can be a student and everyone can be a teacher, no matter what level you're at. Like, you can learn things from other people, even if they're at the start of their journey, and they can learn from you. And, you know, people are so kind with sharing their tips and suggestions and whatever else. And I have no idea, they might have been asked the same question 40, 50 times, and they still answered as if they'd never been asked before. And made great suggestions, and everyone cheered when, you know, you got some good results or whatever. And it was good to listen to sort of the May lot when we were on our calls to see how everyone else was doing, because everyone's completely different. They're coming at it from a different place. They've got different goals. They've got different body types. So yeah, I think you can always learn from other people, and that it's the nicest group of people, honestly. You know, I don't think I've met anyone on RNT who hasn't offered me some piece of advice or encouragement throughout the process, even if it was just a like on a post or, you know, a well done or whatever the case may be. So I think that's really important.
Amazing. And your journey?
My journey, eye-opening, and not yet finished.
Oh, I like it. I like it. Thanks so much for sharing your story, Karen. It's been it's a remarkable story. And for those listening, make sure you check out her case study linked in the show notes.